Looks like we're recording.
We're ready?
We are ready. Today is March 13th, 2024. I'm here at the village in Gainesville with Richard Primosch. My name is Agnieszka Ilwicka-Karuna. Behind the camera is Deborah Hendricks. And we are going to record this interview as part of Art in Aging project for Samuel Proctor Oral History Program at University of Florida. Richard, do I have your permission to record this interview?
You certainly do.
Thank you very much. I would like to start with the very beginning. What you remember about your family stories, famous or infamous?
Well, I think my biggest memory, or my first memory of any kind of vivid, was the end of the war in Europe. I remember the parades and the crepe paper they had hanging up on the street. It was a very, the whole street, the whole block, I guess the whole town got behind this VE Day. Of course, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about because I was only 5 years old or so. But that was the first real memory I had. Looking back on my childhood, it was probably the most normal Ozzie and Harriet type of situation. It was a very healthy environment. In my whole life, I've never heard my parents argue, yell at me or them. Now, I'm sure they couldn't have gone through an entire marriage without saying something, disagreeing. About the closest I can remember was my father working in the city in New York, Manhattan, and it was a Christmas party, and he had to take the train from where we lived on Long Island into the city, and he got caught up in the Christmas festivities, had a bit too much to drink, and never got off the train until it got to the end. Of course, my mother was very upset. She didn't know where he was, and she did yell at him then for not calling her, but that was the age of no cell phones, and he's on a train, so he had no way of calling her. He had to go to the end of the line and wait for the train to come back, and that was about the most the most difficult situation that I saw them in. I was a kid with no direction as far as what my future would hold. I had no idea what the world had out there, nor did I care. I was living in the moment, playing ball with the kids on the block, and it wasn't until probably the last part of high school when the rest of my friends would be talking about where they were going to go to school, where they were going to college, and I never thought about what my plans would be. I obviously had not applied to any school, had not even thought about college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So at the last minute, I applied to a college in Kentucky, of all places. I've never been to Kentucky. I don't know a thing about Kentucky, except I was rumored to not think that Kentucky had bluegrass. So I wanted to see bluegrass. I applied not knowing that the college that I selected was one of the better colleges, and my grades were no way going to handle that. And even if I had the grades, my stupidity in making out the application, I didn't even know who to make it out to. And somebody told me, make it out to the director of admissions. And I thought they said the director of the missions, as if it was some sort of religious entity. And at the last minute, I caught that error, sent out my application, and about a month later, I got my rejection, which was obviously right in line with my grades and my director of the missions. Now I had a real situation, not knowing what to do. I applied for a job in a assembly line, packing aircraft parts, and I hated it. I was there one day, and I went into HR, which wasn't even called HR then. I think it was called, what was it called? Human Resources, perhaps? And I said, can I have a transfer? I was there one day, and they kind of laughed at me, but they gave me a transfer into another job, and in the shipping department. I believe the salary was $1.50 an hour or $1.25 an hour. And ironically, strangely, at the end of the week, the place went on strike, and they raised me about another quarter or a half dollar. And I thought, gee, this is great. I figured by the time I'm 25, I ought to be making $100,000 if they keep making increases. And then that night, I guess I had an epiphany, realizing what the world was really like, and that this was not, I was on a one-way track to disaster. I then went and I enlisted in the Air Force. I signed up for 4 years and went through basic training, and then they sent me to Delaware, to Delaware, and then sent me to the Philippine Islands for a year and a half, and then back to California for 9 months. So all in all, I had just a little short of 4 years in the Air Force. Contrary to what a lot of people think, if you go into the Air Force, that does not mean you're flying an airplane. You're not a pilot. I was an air freight specialist, which meant picking up boxes and loading them. No different than a moving man. And continuing my plight, I hated that job too, because this was in the winter. I was in Delaware, and it was not I wasn't a big strapping guy who was looking to bodybuild and lift a lot of boxes. So I vowed that I was going to go to school and not do this kind of physical labor as a job, and I held true to that. I went to school. When I got out, still not knowing what I was going to do or what I wanted to do, but I thought that the best looking females in the school were all taking speech pathology. So I signed up for speech pathology and theater arts. So I acted in a number of school plays, and took those type of courses. And for the first time in my life, I got out of the situation I was in, as far as I was a socially inept kind of kid. I had never, let me preface this, in high school, we had homeroom. I don't know if you had homeroom, where you go into school and they take attendance and you go into a room, classroom, and there was a kid named Nicholas, something with a P, who was in the same homeroom, and because he was, his last name began with P, we were pretty much hooked together. From the first day he saw me, he said, "Primosch, I'm gonna kick the crap out of you at 3 o'clock today," when school ended. Now, Nicholas was a tough-looking kid. He had black hair. He had hair on his arms, which I didn't. I was like a fawn. I was a waif. I was not a tough kid like Nicholas, I imagine, was. So it scared the hell out of me. And if he was going to beat the hell out of me every day at 3 o'clock, that meant I had to get out of school. Had 2 minutes to 3 and get the bus and get home. Which meant I never went to a sporting event. I never went to a school dance. Well, that didn't bother me because nobody ever taught me how to dance. I never dated. I never had any involvement with anything extracurricular. Continuing along those lines, I never lost my virginity until I was about 18, which I thought was terrible, but that was all I did, I thought. We then, my family bought a house on Long Island, which was more like the country, and enrolled in a high school there for my last year, my fourth year of high school. And I had my second epiphany. Nobody knows me out here. Nobody knows I'm socially inept. Nobody knows I'm a virgin. Nobody knows I don't know how to dance. Nobody knows anything about me. So I started joining things. I got the lead role in the school play. I was sort of the big man on campus, sort of. I think you have to lose your virginity before you're really the big man on campus. I then went to a good friend of mine, and he was a stud. And I said, who should I go out with? And he gave me names of some women, some girls that he'd gone out with. I borrowed my father's car, the family car. I probably went on dates 4 nights a week. Never had the courage to park. So I just never went any further than, I don't even know if I held a hand. But I was inching up on it. I enjoyed high school, my last year of high school anyway. Then I enlisted in the Air Force. I started to say that before. And I went to Delaware. And I used to come home on weekends. I used to hitchhike home. It was only about 150 miles or so. And hitchhiking was a lot safer then and a lot different. And the magic moment came when I was picked up hitchhiking by a slightly older woman who took me under her wing and lost my virginity. But I had to get back to base because I didn't want to flaunt the rules. So the rules won over that situation. Just let me gather my thoughts for a moment.
Maybe I can help you.
Go ahead.
Do you have any memory of the story, how did your parents met?
Not really. They, I know my mother was about 19 or 20 when she got married. My father was about 2 or 3 years older. They were sort of homebodies, family-oriented. They had a lot of, it seemed that the areas that we moved into in the early part were German neighborhoods. So there was a lot of ethnic involvement, parties and things like this. He was involved with, we weren't very religious, although I did go to a Catholic school for the 8 years. And I got hit across the knuckles so many times that they lost me. I might have become a Buddhist monk. I just didn't. I would have probably cold-cocked a nun if she did it again. But they weren't, my folks weren't particularly religious. My father was I'll say a pretend Catholic. My mother was Protestant. I do have a sister. I've left her out completely. When I went into the Air Force, she's 4 years younger than I. So I went in at age 18. She was 14, and I had nothing to do with a 14-year-old sister. I mean, God forbid anybody knows I have a 14-year-old sister. And by the time I got out of the service, having been away for 18 months plus, she had become a young woman, and she had her life and I had mine. So we never really were particularly close. We were not antagonistic, but we weren't particularly close. We became closer much later in life. In fact, she moved into the villages, not the village, the villages, which is where I spent about 10 years of my life when I came down here, prior to coming to the village. So I enjoyed those 10 years. But now where did I leave off?
We were talking about your parents. I'm curious, Where were they from? Because you talked about
They
the
were
German
born in this
Republic.
country. My father had gone back to Austria for a very short period of time, probably less than 6 months. But I don't know why. I never had a particularly close relationship with many of my relatives for no other reason than I was probably exerting my independence. You know, when other kids, young teenagers, parents said we're going to Aunt so-and-so or Uncle so-and-so, they never forced me to go. I did, if I said I didn't want to go, so be it. So I never had particularly close relationship with cousins. So I can't tell you a whole lot about my parents, you know, their lives. I do know my father worked for Texaco. He worked in Manhattan, and he was very liked by everybody. His job was to make sure that the oil tankers had enough, and the rigs, the oil rigs, had enough supplies for the men that were staffing it. So he would do that. When he retired, he got gifts from, he got a statue from Aristotle Onassis, which I thought he was very proud of. We didn't get money, but he got a little statue of something. Let's go back on, you were kind of leading this on.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you know anything about your mother's origin, except that she was born in America?
She was born in this country. Her mother lived across the street from us in an apartment house. She was a very opinionated old lady at that time. At least I thought she was. She was probably very nice, but I didn't know her on those levels. She was Nana.
What languages did they communicate in?
English, an occasional word or two from German, but nothing very conversational. They were not scholastic. They didn't go to college. My mother worked in a knitting mill and worked in an aircraft place, assembly. From early years, I had done unusual jobs, inexpensive jobs. I remember when I was a young kid, I was probably less than 12. I was taking soda bottles and beer bottles to get deposits. And then I graduated into selling pretzels and the place they told me to go was the knitting mills, where there were predominantly women working, and I used to have a basket, a peach basket, and buy the pretzels for 2.5 cents and sell them for a nickel. I always had little odd jobs to do. I didn't declare it on my tax.
I have a question to you about your living space in the 50s. Because, you know, you were born in the 40s, and
Yes.
1940 is the year when United States almost joined the Second World War. So this is just on the verge of the huge shift that took place around the whole world. So I wonder, how does it look like for you? Did you observe any changes in your neighborhood or in your life?
Completely oblivious. I was the most uninformed, non-political, had no idea. It could have been Alexander the Great could have come riding down on our street, and I wouldn't have known it or cared or known who he was or what he was going to do. Even Hitler was not, I don't remember any early involvement or knowledge of the man. And then I guess it was just in old movies and kinescopes and things of that nature that I might have, when I first saw pictures of him and speeches that he was giving, and not knowing his philosophy, had no idea about the death camps, no idea that what was going on, nor could I have done anything at age 4. But thankfully, I missed it.
As a child, did you experience any anti-German sentiments?
No. No.
Or your family?
No. As I said, this was an Ozzie and Harriet family that was surrounded by other Ozzie and Harriet families, and there was just no bigotry. There was no. We never used any. Not swear words, but bigotry, where we belittled any other nationality or race or color or religion. We didn't. And I'm not saying that for any reason. I'm not running for office, so it's not going to haunt me. I'm sure there are other things that might haunt me, but not that. I went to the Philippines. The highlight of my Delaware was my loss of. Went to the Philippines, and that was an eye-opener because the whole culture is different over there. The people are different. They had something like, I never counted them, but I was told that there were 2,500 women that the government took under their auspices and had them checked every couple of weeks for a disease. So I went from a barren landscape into a pretty prolific. had a very good time there. There came a point where they were looking for extras in a movie with Jeff Chandler. I don't know if that name means anything to you. Okay, he was a B actor, and was just going to be an extra in a war movie, and they got paid $25. Wow, that was a biggie. And so I did that, but you weren't allowed to make eye contact with him. You weren't allowed to talk to him. I mean, there's just ridiculous things. Let's see, what else did I do?
How long did you spend working in Philippines?
18 months, a year and a half.
And where exactly was it?
Luzon, which was about, well, the island of Luzon is where Manila is. Manila is the main city there. Now, I'll tell you what I think is an interesting story. We used to call the men, the Filipino men, we didn't know their names. Everybody was Joe. Hey, Joe, you got this, you got that, where you going, are you working today, blah, blah. And they would call us Joe also. Now, it so happened that one night we used to go downtown and go to the bars and drink San Miguel beer. And we had a number of beers. I was feeling it pretty well. And my buddies said they're going to go to the bar across the street. I said, okay, I'll join you. I'll take care of the tab. Big deal. It was probably $5. I'll take care of the tab. I'll meet you in the bar across the street. So they went ahead. They went across the street. I leave this place, and as I get outside, 3 or 4 guys are there. And the leader says to me, hey, Joe, give me a cigarette. And I responded, as one might think, basically tell him what he could do. And I said, give me a cigarette. And I said it again to him. He then reaches in and pulls out a pistol and holds it about 6 inches from my face. He says, Joe, I said, give me a cigarette. You can forget everything you've seen in the movies about if anybody ever does that to you, what you're going to do. You're going to kick him in the groin. You're going to chop him in the neck. You're going to gouge his eyes. You're lucky if you cannot cry. You're terrified. Your life flashes by and you say, my God, I wish I would have given him a damn cigarette. He then took the cigarette. I handed him the cigarettes. He gave one of these shakes. He pulls out the cigarette, puts it in his mouth, passes it around to the rest of the guys, puts it back, takes out the matches, opens up the matchbook, and bends the match and lights it. Anytime I've tried that, I've burned the hell out of my fingers. That's why I've given up smoking 25 years ago. And blows the smoke in my face and then pulls the trigger. And I hear click, click, click. It's empty, or it misfired, and he starts laughing. And I just take off, run across the street. I am scared to death. And I had to gather myself because I didn't want them to see tears in my eyes when I got to the next place. and never forgot that. God, no, I never forgot that. Another incident that happened there is at a different time. We went to the Bay of Pigs. We wanted to go to the Bay of Pigs because we had read about it, heard about it, and on the way there, hope that's not him coming back wanting another cigarette. As we're going to the Bay of Pigs, we pass what used to be, I guess, a wading pool. Sometimes you see them in the city. It can't be more than a foot deep, and it's just those concrete pool. And there must have been 500 crocodiles or alligators, I don't know the difference, in this pool. And I hadn't seen an alligator in my life, and now I'm seeing 500 of them or thereabouts. And I'm so mesmerized by these things, and I'm watching them, and I'm walking through a stand of trees, and all of a sudden I hear something, I feel something, and I sense something, and I turn around, and there is an alligator, can't be more than 10 or 15 feet from me, coming at me. And you don't know what the hell you're gonna do in a situation like that. And I'm just running, to get away from this thing. And I hear whack, and it turns out it's not an alligator, is it? No. They were doing that the other day, and I got all kinds of mud and grass stains all over the window. But I told maintenance, and they got rid of it. Anyway, I heard this whack. The alligator had come to the end of its tether, and he had a chain around his neck, or a rope around, I don't remember if it was chain or a rope. And between his neck and his feet, so he could only go a certain distance, he had probably 15 feet in any direction he could have gone. So it gave him about a 30-foot radius that he could go. And I was fortunately outside the radius, and scared the hell out of me. So that was my second near-death experience. Not that it's terribly important, but later, give you my third one, is I had taken a client, and I know I'm jumping around, I had taken a client down to Acapulco, and we were body surfing, and I saw a good-sized wave coming, and I said, "Here comes a great wave, let's ride it." And as I get ready to push off on, as you would go body surfing, I see this shape about 8 or 10 feet long running parallel to the beach, not more than 10 feet from me. It's obviously a big shark, or a good-sized shark. And this was before Jaws ever came out, so had it been after, I don't know what the hell I would have done. But I started to run, but I'm now in water about waist deep, so you can't run very fast. You can barely walk, and I'm just waiting for this shark to come upon me. And as I get into shallower and shallower water, I can go a little faster and a little faster until I change this panicked run into a macho trot, so nobody on the beach will know that I'm scared to death. And I never went in the ocean again. I stayed in the swimming pool because there were no sharks in the pool. So that's another vivid memory I had. What else down there?
I have one more question about your time in Philippines
Yeah.
before we will move on to
Go ahead.
the other parts of your life. At that time, you were about 21 years old, right?
Right. I went in at 18, and I was in the Philippines after a year and a half. So I was 19 and some months. So I was still pretty wet behind the ears.
How was this experience for you? Philippines is not. This is not going to Texas. It's far away from home. Everyone is on the other side of the ocean. And
Yeah.
how was it?
At the time, there's almost like two memories of it. When you get over there, they really take care of you well. I had a houseboy. He shined my shoes. He made my bed. And it cost me a carton of cigarettes every other week. So the living expenses there. I mean, they take care of your food and your medical and all that. And speaking of medical, I woke up one day, went into the latrine, which is the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and my bottom lip, was almost to my chin. It was so swollen, and I didn't know what happened there, and I just covered it. I didn't want anybody to see. It was like Quasimodo. And I said, I need to see a doctor. So they got me a doctor, or I went to a doctor. I don't remember exactly. And he said, what's the problem? And I took my hand down and I said, look. And he said, so what's the problem? I said, my face is disfigured. It's all swollen, out of shape. He said, were you in a fight? I said, no, I wasn't. I woke up. I was sleeping and I woke up. If you were sleeping, how do you know you weren't in a fight? I said, can I have an American doctor? So they gave me an American doctor, and as soon as he saw it, he said, oh, looks like a spider, either bite or you're allergic to the hair on the spider legs. So I got over that one. That was another one that scared the hell out of me. I'm spending half my life being scared. There was quite a black market on cigarettes and liquor. And we had cards that allowed us to buy the various items, and they punched the cards so you couldn't triple up on any items. But you had to be over 21 to get the liquor. Now, a friend of mine who lived in North Carolina, he bought a car, an old car, and we removed the side panels in the car and then bought as many cartons of cigarettes as we could at $2 a carton and put them in the side panels, and we could hold probably 100 cartons of cigarettes in the car with nobody knowing what we had, and then we sell it for $5 downtown, so we'd double our money. And we became pretty big, we thought, black marketeers, if you will. And then it got to be when we'd get a little bit more daring. If he was not out, if he was using the car or whatever, we didn't have the car, I would go to the movie theater and get a big box of popcorn and empty the popcorn on my bed, put in the cigarettes, cover it up with popcorn, and then go through the checkpoint where the guards were. And here's where I got a little daring. I would offer them some popcorn, and they would always refuse. No, okay. And I ingratiated myself with the guards. Then we went to Bataan and Corregidor, which were famous areas during the World War II. Bataan is the mainland, Corregidor is an island, maybe a quarter or half mile offshore. And we went there. We got sea rations, which were the inexpensive. I don't even know if we paid for it, but if we did, it was very inexpensive. We bought enough sea rations for us, some liquor, beer, whatever, and went down there, and somebody was in charge of getting 5 women. Somebody was in charge, I think I was in charge of protection. So I was the condom getter. And we spent a nice time. Then the women loved it because they never got the chance of leaving the town. They were almost captive there. And they enjoyed the time. We had a nice time at the beach.
And your son remembers that your parents were smoking a lot.
They smoked like crazy. Smoked like crazy. Even when my mother was hospitalized with congenital heart failure or whatever, he was told not to smoke in the house. That lasted until he got home. And then he lighted up. He was really addicted. Did you smoke?
Yeah.
When did you give it up, or did you give it up?
I was never addicted. I smoked occasionally. But I grew up among people that were heavy smokers.
Right.
So I remember the smell in the space.
Yeah. The smell is terrible once you don't smoke anymore. It's just, and I could never smell it while I was smoking, of course. Did you smoke?
How old were you when you smoked the first time?
Smoked the first time, I was probably 13 or 14. I remember I was in a tree, and it was L&M. That was the brand. And then I guess I listened to these 9 out of 10 doctors that said, you smoke this brand, you'll be fine. And I smoked for years. And then my daughter came home from school crying, said to my wife, Daddy is going to die, they told me in school, if he keeps smoking. And when I saw that, I said, all right, I'll stop smoking. I got rid of my cigarettes. I then started smoking cigars occasionally on the golf course. That was a big part of my life. I played a lot of golf. And never went back to cigarettes. Just, let me tell you, go back to Cuba for a moment. When I went down to Cuba, you can't fly from the States directly into Havana. You have to go through either Canada or Jamaica or some other area that has relations with the Cuban government. So I went down through, I don't remember which port of departure I was at, but I wanted to get something to read in case I was bored. And I picked up a pocketbook and a Playboy magazine. And when I went through customs, they took my Playboy magazine and they wouldn't return it. So I wasn't going to fight over a Playboy. Now we go through customs, we get on the bus taking us to the hotel, and our guide, this woman, says, I have to apologize for the slight delay we had. Some stupid American was trying to bring pornography into the country. And I raised my hand and I said, excuse me, I'm the stupid American, and that certainly wasn't pornography. And then she started saying, yes, it was, and we got into a little bit of what's known as a pissing contest. But I gave up, and I said, okay, you win. I said, but I can virtually guarantee you that all the customs agents and baggage handlers are passing around the magazine now. No, we have no pornography in this country. I said, okay. So we get to the hotel, and it's a very famous old hotel, which I understand was owned by George Raft. I don't know if that name means anything, but they didn't keep up. They didn't have any way of chlorinating the pool. It was black. And we get to the hotel, and I go in. I've got very little luggage because we're only going to be there over a long weekend. And I said, I'll go upstairs, put on freshen up, and come down and get a beer. So I go upstairs. The elevator has got an actual operator, an elevator attendant who takes you up and down. I come down, and now the bar was empty when I went up. I come down, and there are two people there, and I go away from them. These are two attractive girls, and I can sense the setup on this. So I don't want anything to do with them. I sit away from them. I don't get involved in a conversation or anything, because I could just see me rotting away in some Cuban prison for passing out pornography or whatever. So So that ended that little escapade. That led me to, the final night that we stayed in Havana, it was rumored that Fidel was going to join us for dinner. How it started, I have no idea. Oh, and there were 14 people on the trip and myself. I had no idea who these people were. They turned out to be communists. They all owned or worked in newspapers that were communist publications. It was never discussed. The final night, now I got to see these people every day. I don't know much about them, but I can recognize them. The final night, we're having dinner at a place called the Club Tropicana, which is their big nightclub, which the costumes are just a couple of levels above burlap. They're not very attractive costumes because they probably haven't had new costumes in years. And we're having dinner, and sitting across from me is this very attractive, youngish woman, real peaches and cream. And I said, "What is your name?" And she tells me her name. And I said, "Why are you here? What are you doing here?" I said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "Indiana," which fits the mold, peaches and cream, Indiana. I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "My husband hijacked an airplane and I joined him." Now I'm really caught up in this is during the era of the hijackings. And I'm asking her about it. And he hijacked the plane, came to Cuba. I don't know if he bought a house or rented a house. And she joined him. And they lived happily ever after in Cuba. I said, how is the expense? Tell me anything you can. I did write, and I don't have it, but I wrote about a 4-page article about the trip and about conditions in Cuba. I did not like it down there. I like the physicality of the place. The beaches are very, very attractive. The weather is nice. The people are nice. But there's a black cloud that you can feel over the country. But we had complete freedom of the country, except for a place called, I think it was called Revolutionary Square, where Fidel would give his speeches, and they didn't want that to be photographed for purposes of security. In case there was an attempt on his life, he would be protected. What else can I say?
Well, Rich, we didn't discuss yet a couple of things that I would like to bring up now. So first, after the army, after your
Air
service,
Force, yeah.
yeah, after the Air Force, when you went to study speech pathology,
When I went where?
when you went for studying, when
Yes.
you went to school, did you have any concept on your further career, or you
None
settled
at
any
all.
plan for
None
yourself?
at all. wherever the wind took me. I didn't have any money. And when I say I didn't have any money, I don't think I had
You
$50.
need any help?
I hate to ask a woman to do it, but
Pleasure.
I think I loosened it.
Yes, you did.
Thank you. I won't put this in the next recording.
No.
Then I took not knowing what I was going to do. I had no money. I had a friend who lived in, when I was out in California, I had made a good friend, and I thought I'd go out there for a while. But I didn't have any money. I didn't even have $50 to catch a bus, if you could catch a bus for $50. My career of selling pretzels was going to get me to California. So I went to an employment agency and I said, I need a job. And they said, what can you do? And I said, probably anything, but I still need a job. They said, how would you like to be a travel agent? I said, I don't know what a travel agent is. They said, well, they sell travel. I said, okay, perfect. So I went for an interview. The receptionist, who turned out she became a good friend of mine, she interviewed me, made the recommendation, and I got the job at $340 a month. I still remember that magic number. And I had never been any place, so other than I had been to the Philippine Islands, but that's not a big destination for Americans to go to. I did go to Miami Beach, and then I started to really do some traveling. Went to the Machu Picchu in Peru. Been to Europe maybe 20 times. England, Italy, most of the countries over there. Spain. Have not been to Poland. South America. Then I started doing a same company. I was with the company for 40 something years. I started a group division where we'd handle travel incentives, conventions, that type of thing. Then I started a school for travel, learned to be a travel agent. Ran that for a number of years.
So, can you please describe me the way how you were selling tours to American population?
Oh, I wasn't on the front lines selling the tours. Excuse me. I eventually evolved into meeting with companies that had large sales forces. And if they have large sales forces, they have large travel expenses. And I would show them how they could cut their expenses. Now, our biggest account was Symbol Technologies, which has, I don't know if you're familiar with the company, but they were spending about 11 or 12 million dollars a year on their sales force traveling. When the Shah was was fleeing the country of Iran. We had supplied they had supplied, the government had supplied the Iranian Air Force with planes, F-14 fighter jets. And we had moved all their hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the United States into Tehran and Isfahan and areas over in Iran. My job was to get to these companies and show them how we could save them money with a travel policy. We would negotiate deals with the airlines, with the hotels, with the car companies, but primarily the airlines. But that was probably the bigger expense that they would have. So I wasn't selling tours. That's a different specialty, a different level of selling. What else?
It takes certain skill to stay in one profession for so many years.
It does, and in one company. Some people think I was made the wrong move. I should have jumped around and played one company against the other, for monetary reasons. But I had a comfort level there. Eventually, the person who started the company, the president of the company, his sister is the woman I married. There was I didn't marry her because she was the president's sister. It just so happened.
And how did it happen?
How did it happen? I was on a trip with a company. I've forgotten which company, and she was on a vacation. I was in the Bahamas with a trip. We had like 150 people. And she was down in Florida just on a long weekend vacation. And he called her up and said, why don't you come over to the Bahamas? I'll get you a room for nothing, and you'll spend a couple days here. So she said, okay. That's when I first met her. But now I was there with another woman. So it was just, that's the first time I met her. Then I don't know if we spoke when we got back to New York, which is where the headquarters are. I lived in New York. The woman that hired me, initially I said the receptionist hired me or recommended that they hire me. She was having a party in Manhattan, and she said, why don't you and Betty come? Why don't you ask Betty to come? So I did. And Betty was my wife. And she went with me. That's the beginning of the relationship. And she was not resentful of this other woman at all. She was mature enough to realize that, we had no future together, and maybe I did with this one. Keep going.
Yeah, so once you realized that you would like to have relationship with your wife, what year did you marry?
We married in 1969.
How old were you then?
I was 29. She was 31, I think. She was 2 years older. I used to kid her about that all the time.
Was it back then a big deal to marry someone who is older?
No, but I would just get her. What do they call a person who is? It's usually an older man going for a younger woman. It's a what do they call that? Is it?
Trophy wife.
You what?
Is it called a trophy wife?
No, but before she becomes a trophy wife, you're considered.
I don't know. They're all derogatory.
I'll have to let you know if I think of the word. I'll let you.
No problem.
Cradle robber.
Not a grave robber.
A cradle robber.
A cradle robber? No, but it's similar.
Yeah.
It's similar, but there's an actual name. Who's older, you or your husband?
Excuse me?
Who is older, you or your husband?
My husband.
Okay.
But that's just a coincidence.
It's what?
That's coincident. I didn't check his birth certificate
Okay.
before we dated.
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other, perhaps interesting parts of my life. There was a time when I wanted to go into the theater, not to go watch a movie, but to get involved. And I auditioned for a show in Manhattan, and I was terrible. I did it on a whim, and after a couple of martinis, and obviously didn't get the part. But I realized that there was it's such a difficult career path that everybody wants to be a star. Everybody would like to see their name in lights and on the red carpet. It's not realistic. Some people make it, but very few. And I didn't want to live in such an insecure environment. I'm open for a lot of, I don't shy away from anything public. I have been on a couple of, well, not a couple, one quiz show, Password. I lost that. Back at the Village, it happened that the person who was running trivia in the lifestyle arena, she left to go to nursing school. So I asked if I could run it. They said, sure. So I run the trivia for the college, which I enjoy.
This recording is part of the project called Art of Aging.
Right, I think that's on today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. The project is actually running for quite a bit, and the whole purpose of us recording Art of Aging is actually to understand what does it mean today to be retired. So question to you, Did you prepare your retirement? Did you plan your retirement?
Not nearly well enough. Not nearly well enough. When I started working, I don't think there were things like 401ks. And then when they did start, I got involved, and then it went bust. So I lost that money. I didn't have enough money to keep me as I would like to be kept. Do I sound like a...
No.
No, I didn't. I won't say I'm frugal, but I'm aware of my limitations of finances. And I don't try to overspend that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that our society is designed to support care in any aspect or not?
Care? Well, we have some programs, obviously, Social Security, but it's a tough question. You know, it's going to lead to, eventually, I think it's going to get to the homeless and what's happening out with all these people that have no place to go. They have no place to go. They have no money. Even if they had a place, they can't afford it. So I don't know what that program. I'm glad I'm not the president, because I don't know if he knows what the hell to do. Is it this way in Poland?
No, our system is very different.
It is? In what respect?
We have percentage of homeless people is very low. You have to work really hard to be homeless and to stay in that position, because the system will support you to get out. So you have to reject it voluntarily. And people of certain age, they get more benefits. So in other words, the older you are, then the system takes better care of you.
That's interesting. Is that like a Social Security program?
It's just different because everyone gets retirement.
They don't have to save up? Not there, really? What about medical?
Medical is free for everyone since birth.
Not bad.
Did you ever experience anything like this in your life?
No. No.
And how was it at the time when you were at the Air Force? Did the Army take care of you, or there
Yes,
were
they
still
did.
certain areas that you had to take
No,
care
they
of?
take care of you completely. Is it the best of care? I probably within bounds. I mean, I never had anything terrible happen to me. I didn't need a heart transplant or anything like that. But I would imagine that they take care of that if, but no, they take good care of you.
What was your, based on what you made decision to come to the village?
Interesting question. I was in the villages first, as I said, for about 10 years. And one of the big reasons I selected the villages was all the golf down there. They had, I don't know how many, 50 golf courses on premises. Now, I had a hip transplant, not a replacement, not a transplant, a replacement 3 years ago. And somehow, I guess I didn't do the proper rehab, and my balance is not good. And that's the reason I have this. And about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, I woke up on the floor in my bedroom in the Villages. I don't remember falling out of bed. I know I wasn't carried there by a big bird. I wasn't in any kind of pain. I tried to get back into bed and I couldn't because there was nothing to grab onto. As I grabbed, the sheets would come with me. So there was nothing more to do than to go to sleep on the floor, which I did. I had a good night's sleep, woke up, and decided to try again to get into bed. Well, with a fresh start, I got into bed. And then I said, okay, this was easy. Let me try it again. I'll go down on the floor and come back into bed. Well, I got on the floor and couldn't get back into bed. So again, there was nothing to do but to go down and take another nap, which I did. And then when I mentioned it to my son and my daughter, they said, well, we can't have you 100 miles away from us. Why don't you come up here? I said, okay. I had no major ties up there. I just had friends and acquaintances. And so I went up there. They fixed the place up. They put the furniture in. They bought the furniture. They did everything for me. They are the most wonderful kids that have ever been on this earth. Really wonderful. That's how I got to here.
How do you like this place?
It's okay. I mean, I can't go crazy nuts. I did have. You don't have friends anymore when you retire. You have acquaintances, and then you slowly make stronger acquaintances, but they're still not like the friends you had when you were much younger. I have friends in the Villages. I have acquaintances here. Perhaps it'll get stronger as I spend more time here. And there's a learning curve wherever you start new. You don't know the people. You don't know who to trust, who to say what to. You don't know the rules of the road.
Starting fresh.
You're starting fresh. I just hope someday that kid with the dark hair on his arm doesn't appear and tell me he's going to beat the hell out of me. Or somebody to say, you got a cigarette, Joe.
Do you see people secretly smoking cigarettes?
I don't see anybody smoking cigarettes. I know there's a sign, no tobacco on the premises, either smoking or chewing or anything. I know, had this been me 15, 20 years ago, I would have, you got to be kidding. I'm going to smoke, whether you give it or not. But no, and nobody, I don't see people smoking. And I think that's probably a sign of what's happening in the non-retiring world. Do you find a lot of people smoking?
Not at all.
No.
Plus, today people are smoking electronic cigarettes more often.
But that's just as bad. It's just as bad. Who are they kidding?
For how many years were you smoking actively?
From age 14 till 40 years, maybe. I'm sure my lungs are not vibrantly pink, but they're not black.
Mm-hmm. And how old were your parents when they passed away?
Well, my mother passed first. She was 77, I believe. My father died about 10 years later. He was about 87, 88, in that area. And I'm determined to go to 100.
Sounds promising.
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, what are your plans for the next 16 years?
I don't have any plans. I really don't have any. Plans seem to require money. There's a couple here, and obviously I'm not looking over anybody else's finances, but I see this couple here that just completed a 96-day cruise around the world. Yeah, I see the look on your face. Can you imagine going away for 96 days, 3 months? And they're gone all over. In fact, this week they're doing a presentation on Manchuria and other places in China. Last month they did, the heck did they have last month? They're not picking the usual spots. Oh, I think they had Devil's Island. That was a big regret of mine. I enjoyed. Do you know the name Papillon? Have you ever read the book, his life? I thought that was the most wonderful book, and he was such a hero. And then one day, I was over in Spain on the coast, and in a new, even though I don't speak French, Papillon was French. He was in the hospital and cancer. He had cancer, and I don't know if he had an encouraging prognosis, but he was only about 20 miles away. And I said, I'm going to go visit him tomorrow, and I'll get through the language barrier some reason. Somebody invited me, would you like to play golf? Guess what I took? Golf. And that's such a big regret of mine. I could have had the opportunity to meet this man and
Yeah. Speaking of regrets, do you have any word of wisdom or advice for the future generations or just the people that will watch your interview?
now that's an interesting question, request. Get rid of the word intimidation. just do what your gut says to do within reason, and don't be foolish, but don't let names or titles or anything like that frighten you or scare you away from what you think you should be doing or you might want to be doing. If you could live your life again, what would you do?
Me?
Yeah,
I would probably do the same.
same.
And you?
I think I might want to do something in medicine. No, I don't have any background in that, and I don't know why, but I think I would have been decent at it. How about you? No?
I don't know.
Unfortunately, we only get one real shot at this. Certainly at this age, you have room to make changes in your 40s. At 50, you're pushing it. At 60s, you're really pushing it. At 80, that portion is over. So enjoy it.
Wow. Thank you very much.
How long have we been speaking?
Right about 90 minutes, I'd say.
About 90 minutes. Is there anything else that you would like to share that we didn't cover?
I can't think of anything at the moment. I guess if I do think of something later, it's too late.
How many grandchildren do you have?
I have 3. My son has got a boy and a girl, and my daughter's got a son. She lives outside of the outskirts of Atlanta. Her son lives in North Carolina. And my son has a school, a private school here, and he's got 2 kids. And they're real homebodies, except when they're in Colorado skiing.
Look at these pictures there.
Yeah,
Can
can
you
you?
talk about the pictures?
You what?
You want to
You
talk?
see, we brought here 2 photographs.
Oh, well, this one is an early.
You can hold it up for the camera, and I can zoom in. Yeah.
I don't know if it's clear enough. It's an old.
Hey, who is that?
That's my folks.
And their
Probably around in the 1920s, I think.
name? What's their
And
names?
what was the name of your mother and name of your father?
Fred and Bertha, although she used the name, or they used the name Trudy, which then got shortened to Tootie. Somehow Bertha, I think, conjures up a picture of a very heavy woman. And Fred was very outgoing, very gregarious. Well, it's basically the same word. Life of the party. Yeah, this is me on the right with the red tie.
Okay. Ah, okay.
And that's my wife. That's Betty. Same as behind you.
How many years have you been married?
29. I think it's 29. Maybe it was 39. We married in 69.
Okay. On behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program and myself and Deborah, I would like to thank you for sharing with us your family history and your own personal story.
Thank you
Very much.
Thank you.